Welcome to this rapid revision session looking at the golden 20s. You may notice I've put a question mark there. That's because part of this is going to be working out whether this period in German history really was that golden. Was it good for everyone or just some? And did it really disguise some other big problems? Well, let's get into it. Change in Germany. There's no ignoring the struggles in Germany from 1919 to 1924. But once hyperinflation was dealt with, there was some reason to be optimistic in Germany. The first reason was a reduction in unemployment. This fell from 2 million people to 1.3 million people between 1926 and 1928. There was also a fall in working hours, so people were working fewer hours for the same sort of pay. A 50-hour working week was typical beforehand, but it dropped to a 46-hour working week between 1925 and 1927. There was also an increase in real wages. They were up 25% between 1925 and 1928. Real wages take into account inflation and price rises, so it meant that people were feeling a quarter richer. They could buy more with their wages. Housing was also improved. There were 37,000 new homes by 1929. And war pensions have been paid. These were being paid to 1.35 million families, which helped to lessen the effects of the war which were still lingering. All this adds up to an overall increase in the standard of living in Germany. However, much of this was paid for by big business taxes and US loans. The big businesses resented paying for workers, but also US loans meant that Germany would one day have to pay this money back. But things were at least looking up. One of the more interesting and visible changes in society was change for women. The end of the Kaiser's rule brought new freedoms to German people, and especially for women. German women were given equal rights and voting equality with men. This was well ahead of both the UK and USA, who considered themselves democracies. In this respect, Weimar Germany was more democratic than they were. By 1932, about 10% of Reichstag deputies were women. Of course, that's not very many, but you've got to remember how patriarchal society still was at this time, so it was a start. World War I had encouraged women into the workplace. In 1918, 75% of women worked. This had dropped to 35% by 1925 though, as men came back from the war and retook up their jobs. But more women had part-time jobs. The number of women who worked as doctors also doubled between 1925 and 1932. Many women had never earned money of their own before, instead relying on household income, maybe of their family or a husband. This brought further opportunities in the form of cultural changes for women. Increasingly independent young women began to challenge old expectations. They cut their hair short and skirts became shorter too. Smoking and drinking both increased. Women in the cities enjoyed meeting up with friends and enjoying jazz music and cabaret, challenging old ideas about the traditional housewife. Birth rates fell as women married later and became mothers older. Divorce rates had doubled since the start of World War I, as women refused to stay in loveless marriages. This was the nature of the 1920s new woman, but not all approved. It's tempting to be dazzled by all the pictures of cabaret and Charleston dancing and think that the whole of society transformed in the 1920s, but we shouldn't get carried away. There was a reaction against this change, particularly for women. Some women didn't want to challenge old ideas. They were happy with traditional roles and found the idea of the new woman threatening and intimidating. Some men embraced change, but many saw the role of men in society being undermined, and they feared this. Conservatives and the church wanted women to return to traditional roles as mothers and housewives. However, this pushback is less visually memorable than the era of cabaret and flappers, and so it can be easy to overlook, but it is still important. Change didn't just happen for women though. There were new cultural ideas across society. One of the causes of this was that the restrictions of the Kaiser's traditional society were now gone. The Weimar Constitution enshrined new freedoms in law, and people had money to spend as the economy recovered. All of this added up to many parts of German society looking to reinvent themselves after the tragedy of war. So there were new cultural trends, not just in Germany, but around Europe and the rest of the world. One of these was modernism. This was the belief that art should look to the future, not just hark back to the past. There was beauty to be seen in technology and industry. Another was objectivism. This was the belief that art should reflect reality, not just beauty, but poverty and suffering too. They all had meaning. They can often be found side by side, especially in the cities. And expressionism. This was the belief that art can express opinions and feelings. It doesn't have to be realistic, it can depict the abstract too. So you can draw something that is entirely unrealistic, but it expresses an idea or an emotion. And this led to cultural spread too. It was helped by government money. The government saw value of the arts and to the economy and to people's happiness. Money was spent on theatres, orchestras and cinema. The poster there is of the famous Fritz Lang film Metropolis. This was one of the most groundbreaking films of its time, and it's well worth a watch. But also there were new design ideas. Modernist principles spread. The Bauhaus Design College in Berlin popularised the use of modern, simple lines in design and the emphasis on functionality, not ornate decoration. They also concentrated on new materials like aluminium. You can see this set of nested tables is typical of the Bauhaus design. They look well ahead of their time. They perhaps wouldn't look out of place in a home today, but certainly they look more like 1960s furniture than 1920s furniture. So there was change in art. Modernist and expressionist ideas made artworks more about deeper meanings than just depicting the real world. The work of Otto Dix compared the extravagance of the Weimar Republic with the suffering of war veterans, as in this street scene here. Cinema also increased in popularity. The government-funded UFA film organisation encouraged innovation in cinema. Fritz Lang's Metropolis imagined a 21st century world of flying machines, skyscrapers and robots. It even grappled with AI. Can a machine think and feel? By 1932, there were over 3,800 cinemas showing talkies. These were brand new films with sound, as well as the more traditional silent motion pictures. In this particular screen grab from the film Metropolis, you can see the mind of a real woman is being transferred into an android robot by a mad scientist. It really was groundbreaking for its time. There were new ideas in architecture as well. Bauhaus design principles affected buildings. The Einstein Tower, pictured here, was designed by Erich Mendelsohn. It was designed to look like a rocket, at a time when such ideas were barely known, let alone even built, truly the realm of science fiction. But against this, there was a backlash. There was a backlash from the left. Communists objected to money being spent on the arts instead of workers' welfare. But there was a backlash from the political right too. Nationalists objected to the decline in traditional German art forms. So not everyone enjoyed the change. Let's sum up our final points then. Between 1924 and 1929, Germany saw significant progress for many. Unemployment and working hours went down. Housing, pay and pensions went up. Women had new political, social and working freedoms, including the right to vote. New art, cinema and architecture brought optimism about the modern world and a new way to express humanity. However, not everything was so positive. New social schemes cost big business profits and relied on American money, making the economy more fragile. Many men and some women opposed the morals and freedom of the new woman of the 1920s. And some traditionalists rejected cultural trends. Ultimately, future events would prove that these things would be indeed very fragile. So was this period really the golden 20s? Or did it just seem good compared to what had come before and what came after? You'll probably find historical interpretations to support both points of view here, and perhaps you'll even have to study and write about them. But for now, that's the end of this rapid revision video. I hope it's been a useful summary for you, and if it has, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more. It's also the last video of this first unit, looking purely at Weimar Germany. From next video, we're going to be looking at the rise of the Nazis, and things are going to get a lot more sinister indeed. For now though, thanks for watching, and goodbye.